Hello, everybody. Hi, Howie. Hi. Welcome. It is me. It is DM Dan. And it is you, our faithful and loving audience. Probably just Sheldon at the moment. Hi, Sheldon. You alright, mate? Hello. Welcome to another Tavern Between Dimensions. I am joined by two wonderful creatures today. To one side of me. Yeah, that side. I've got Chris. hello.
What? Oh, yeah, you've got a different thing. You were poking at a black square on my screen. I was like, oh, hello, Dan. How are you?
I am good. It's you're back.
I am back. Yeah.
Back, yes. You were one of our first guests on the on like the first series. We're going to call it a series of Tavern. But yeah, pleased to have you back all the way from sunny Roldark and other things around the UK.
You nearly said Bristol, didn't you? Then.
Yeah, a little bit.
From sunny 6 miles away.
And to my other side, we have the disembodied voice of Lane. Hello.
That's me.
How you doing?
I am exhausted. Work has been very busy, but
Yeah.
I feel uniquely qualified to talk on this topic, considering I'm running 6 games right now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's a big juicy topic. But I thought, given that like we're all people, we've probably all had a bit of a crazy week. I know I certainly have. Yeah. What's up in our lives, Chris? What news do you bring from the lands of pro DMing and like because you've been busy recently, haven't you?
Yeah. So we just raised £3,000 for Movember between 4 DMs, 16 cast members, and then loads of crew from London. So we did a 24-hour live stream on Movember's Twitch channel.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun. And it was the story went all the way through, and it was all to support World Suicide Prevention Day. So we did a story about a person called Woe, W-O-E.
Yeah.
And Woe was pretty close to suicide, and the story was about going through their past, their present, and then their future, to try and bring them back through D&D, like through the adventure, to show them how they could have a better life, and to show them that it doesn't end, things get better. And that was the story overall. So it was very touching. There were a lot of comical moments, a lot of difficult moments. I did 12 midnight to 6 a.m. And
Okay.
it was that weekend where it was really hot.
Yeah.
And then you had the studio lights, and even like at 3 a.m, it was like 40 degrees in the studio or something ridiculous. But it was really worth it. We had a custom mechanic where when donations went past a certain point, they rolled on this stupid, like ultra weird chaos magic table. So at one point, people's fingers turned to sausages. The druid thought that they'd ascended to godhood and started speaking down to everybody. So it was really cool. It was a really fun story. We raised a lot of money. I'm really proud of everyone who was involved.
And over the space of 24 hours, you would have been able to finish at least 2 combats.
Yeah.
Don't be ambitious.
A whole it was cool. We had a member of the Yogs cast involved in the first
Amazing.
game.
Yeah.
The second game was so everyone who played in my game was a DM as well.
Mhm.
Third game we had a queer takeover, which the very talented Anna ran. And then the fourth game, Harry, who's a superstar, does really cool things. Had this kind of neo-future, bright white light camera kind of angle thing going on, which worked out really well. So I should have said, Jack, the very first DM, absolutely set up the mood. He was with Bryony from the Yogs cast. So it was a really successful event. We're going to do another stream, hopefully in November. I've probably just...
Spoiled that.
I think, yeah, spoiled
Exclusive,
that,
you heard it here first.
Yeah. In November, for Movember, but that will be more in a home setup, and I'm going to be producing 2 of those games in the background while other DMs get an opportunity to shine.
No.
So I'm really looking forward to that too.
No, that all sounds absolutely amazing. We haven't behind the scenes talk. We haven't actually played Explorers in a while. So Lane, you been up to anything fun? Any fun games or anything of note that's been happening recently?
One of my games actually ended recently. It was
Okay.
one of the only ones that I got to be a player in. And my girl got
Oh.
like a quite happy little ending, which I'm very happy with.
Okay, so not a TPK then.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Okay, that's cool. That's sweet. Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's been anything else that's really happened. I think I've just been so deep in the editing hole, but
we were talking about this before. It's a time sink.
I surface for bags of crisps and cups of tea.
Well, God bless
your
your long-suffering partner. That's all I can say.
I know she's a bae. Yes, ill is Carl. Carl is ill today, so he's slacking off. Don't worry, there is no sick pay for staff of the tavern, and you can't unionise because we're extraterrestrial. So big clap. We have what I believe is a very juicy topic to discuss, and from what I gather, we all have quite a few thoughts. Thoughts on them. So, yes, for anyone looking at the title of the stream right now, we're going to talk about balance. And that, I feel that's a massive, like, boogeyman of a word in tabletop RPG. I think more so because I feel it's a bit more prevalent in sort of like D&D and the other kind of like D20 systems. But yeah, we're just gonna just want to throw some ideas out. So it's designed. The whole question's a bit ambiguous anyway. So I guess I'll throw it open to you two first. In your minds, when we say balanced encounters, what am I even talking about?
Lane?
So for me personally, it's an encounter, either social or combat, that allows everyone at the table to have fun, no matter what happens.
Okay.
Yeah. I write in scenes. To go back to Roll Dark again, we recently did a how to be a DM thing at Oxford University. And mine was on prep. So when I prep any game, everything's on a scene. So if it's like Lane was saying there, it could be social, could be exploration or combat. So those are the three that I tend to go to. There's others as well, like puzzle, but you could put that in exploration and there's subgenres. But I always have that at the top, so make sure that the scene's listed. But ultimately, D&D players are going to try and fight a door and social a dragon. So it's fluid. So yeah.
I mean, so specifically, like the concept of like balanced. How does that? What does that look like compared to not balanced? Because so for me, like the thing that kind of prompted me to ask this question is that I was going to scroll through my feeds, and there's a channel that has specifically done a load of videos based on figuring out if combat ratings for monsters are correct.
Nope.
And so, so there's that big old table in the back of the 5th edition, D&D 5th edition Dungeon Master Guide, right? And it's just like, if you are CR3, you are expected to do this much damage and have this much armor and this much health. So, like, all of the content, and it was a relatively big channel. I'll look for it in a sec. I'll chuck a name down. But it was just like, oh, you got this and you got this, so it's an average DPR of this and this and this and this and this, and then actually that should be this and this and this. And so if you want to fix, like, this isn't the right CR, if you want to fix it. And it kind of dawned on me that I was just like, we've just dissected this poor Sphinx into its like rawest attributes, and like the whole bit about a Sphinx almost shouldn't be about how much damage it's doing or whatever. So then, and I've always been of the opinion that like balance is a myth, like in the sense that it's, like a lot of people. I feel that a lot of people hold it on like this pedestal, and that for something to be good, tick, it needs to be balanced. But what does it? Yeah, to go back to the question, what does imbalance look like?
The first encounters in Descent into Avernus are very imbalanced. So level 1, you face a bandit captain, which is CR2, and 7 bandits, which is CR1/8.
Right.
So you're talking about a like almost a CR4 encounter, which is really tough if people haven't played it before, and that's their first time. You got 4 players in there. It's going to get tricky, and you're going to have to involve other people.
Sure.
I fudged. That was my first time playing 5th edition, and I fudged a lot of rolls on that. And I was like, yeah.
On a similar note, there's a pre-written module that a friend ran for me a while ago. Acquisitions Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of silly in tone, and right? Kind of silly.
Yeah.
Penny Arcade, right?
But it's absolutely fucking miserable in terms of combat.
Oh, really?
Almost everything can stomp you in almost no time flat. I know the expectation is that, like, you're just, like, you're sort of expendable members of Acquisitions Incorporated, so you're kind of expected to keep bringing in new characters in.
Right, because you're all like interns in that setting, aren't you, right?
But at the same time, people get attached to their characters.
For sure.
I don't want to bring in someone at level 1. To put this in perspective, one of the fights, about halfway into the first dungeon, is a giant spider.
Okay.
This module starts at level 1.
Sure.
You don't get out of that alive. At least one character is going to die.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Something I'll pick up on, because I found it interesting that actually in both of your analogies, your anecdotes, they were both focused around the level 1 experience.
Right. Because, so here's the thing, Dan. If you go above level 12 in D&D, you're fucked. There's no other word for it. As a DM, you're like, I'm going to throw 600. No, you've done it. Fuck it. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree. Like, we've run Princes of the Apocalypse to level 15. So it's like Prince of the Apocalypse Plus, and yeah, they're just 100% came a point where it's just like, I'm just doing this for the cinematics now.
There are only 2 modules, and one of them isn't out yet, that go to level 20. And the first is the Tiamat module, the second Tiamat module, and then I think the Planescape one's going to run to Mad Mage. Sorry,
Mad Mage as well, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. But I think the Planescape one's going to go up to level 20. But that's out of all of those modules. Yeah. Only 3 of them go up to level 20. Yeah. That tells me something about your game design.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would argue yes and no, because, well, I mean, we'll circle back on that idea. Like, actually, no, sorry, we'll go in now. I think the problem we've just kind of 100% highlighted, right, is that if we're focusing on like D&D specifically, and we can say the same for Pathfinder or the other D&D D20 types, is that the player experience brought on by the player character capabilities is so wildly different from like low level, mid level, high level. Because there is that almost like unspoken rule that level 12 plus in 5th edition is just the Wild West. Like, the DM's just turning up and going, what would you like to murder today? Like what world would you like to turn to jam and custard? Whereas in level 1, like, I would love to see statistically how many level 1 wizards have died to a goblin arrow.
Well, yeah, you just have to fart on a wizard, don't you, and he dies, let alone anything else. So, yeah, there's that whole idea of, like, I guess on the one hand, like, how would you even balance it? But, like,
what would make it balanced? Like, how would you measure it? And there's even a part of me that would almost argue, like, is it something that we should be measuring? Like,
kind of. I think there's this thing with role playing, right, where D&D is the most accessible system out there. It's a fucking movie that we went to watch. It's on every Twitch stream. Everybody plays D&D, right?
Yeah.
But I think that once you've played, especially 5th edition, once you've played for a while, if you've ever played any kind of video game where you want to get a bit more grit, if you've ever played Darkest Dungeon, you do then start to look for other systems, because it is made for storytelling. Dungeons and Dragons, you know, it's not a dungeon crawler. It's this huge accessible roleplay beast, and I think that's what it's all about. Now, that's not to say that you can't do other things to it. When we spoke last, we were talking about other settings in D&D, and I think, like, if you add in, like, the Call of Cthulhu rules, so I think the guy Sandy, I can't remember his surname, but he's actually written 5th edition Call of Cthulhu in, and you can add in those horror rules. For Strahd, what I'm doing at the moment is I'm running some of the extra rules that a guy put in called Pyram King to add in horror checks and things like that to make it more difficult. This book, which I just grabbed there, this is for level 20 to 30 play. This is Epic Legacy. But if you're a bastard, you add in all of the NPC stuff, which makes them harder once you get past level 12. You give them those extra abilities, those like legendary resistance. What do you mean it only goes up to 3? It goes up to 8. Shut up. But do your players also want that? Or, you know, do they want a cuddly pillow? And do they want to have a story time? Like, there's both elements to my play. If I'm a player, I do want that role-playing experience. You know, I want to go and hang out in the tavern with Lane, but then I want a difficult combat as well. I don't want it to feel like it's lopsided.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's your thoughts on it? Sort of like the, if it comes like the measurability, or like the pros and like how you would implement it, kind of thing.
So the way I look at every single one of my combats in every single one of my games is I don't ever use CR, first off.
Sure.
I think it's pointless because it doesn't take into account your group. For every single combat that I want to come up, I will. It's a little bit different if it's like a big dungeon.
Yeah.
That won't get individual like looks at, but I will look at my group, and I will see and know what each person who's playing a character wants to do as that character.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and build encounters that will let them do that. If I have a player who's a fighter, who wants to just tank, who wants to be the big hero that takes all the hits for their enemies, for their allies, I'm going to, maybe a one encounter, I will just build it around that to give them that feeling.
Like lots of teeny tiny, like, kobolds or whatever.
Who will see, because, I don't know, the fighter's got a gem in his armor.
Yeah.
They'll see the gem, they'll swarm him.
Yeah.
That gives him the good fantasy of, I'm protecting all my people. And that's that for that combat. There will be ones where I will just try to challenge them. And again, it will be adjusted from group to group.
Yeah.
But that's my general philosophy.
I think that's good philosophy. Like, there's stuff like Kobold Fight Club's a great tool where it will tell you, oh, this says it's deadly, but actually it's medium. And then you can put in, you don't have to have a generic group in there. You can say, you can put in a detailed party as well.
Yeah.
So, like, you can have a wizard, a rogue, whatever it is. So it will take into account, oh, this party has no healing, or this party has loads of healing.
Okay, that's
and then it will build it based on that.
Yeah.
That's a really good tool. I really recommend Kobold Fight Club. That's a really great tool, and it has everything Monster Manual and some third-party stuff on there for you to build out stuff on.
Because isn't it like KFC Plus now? Because it got like revamped.
Kobold Fight Plus. Yeah, sorry.
Nice. Okay.
Really, really good tool.
So, yeah, I mean, Lane, something that you touched on there, like you were mentioning the group, and like, I think stuff like that is kind of like why I feel that, again, we're focusing on like D&D and that, it's just a bit of a pipe dream to think that a combat, like all of your combats could be balanced, because you can't, like CR is, you know, arguably the tool that we're given as D&D dungeon masters to balance our encounters, like to build our encounters. It tells us what roughly things are supposed to be suitable for our players. But yeah, group competition massively affects it. The terrain massively affects it. How many fights you've had up to that point massively affects it. Just like how the players are feeling at that. Like if you've got a table of pumped players, like that's gonna, I would argue that a combat encounter goes wildly different to if everyone's just on their last like physically the players themselves are just like a bit drained, they've had a rough week, like it's like late Friday or Thursday or Friday night, like we're here because we want to see friends, but actually I don't really want to fight the Lich tonight, like I ain't got the beans to, I think that so much of that affects it. So
yeah, I think you're right.
So then, like, what is the benefit of it? You know, like if you've kind of gone, I've built the most balanced encounter ever, that isn't chess. You know, like I would argue the only game in the world that is inherently balanced is chess. I
mean, the board games they try and balance out as well, but it's always going to be how much can you test an encounter before it goes in.
Yeah.
But you also don't, I'm a big believer in giving players encounters which are way too easy and also way too difficult for them. Like, you should run from this guy. He's gonna fuck you up.
Yes.
Like, he's a death knight on a flying fiery horse. Like, you should
100%.
know that he's coming down for you.
100%. Because I feel like, and like, by all means argue with me if you disagree, but like, I think sometimes when we reminisce upon the most sort of like epic moments of our D&D histories or role-playing histories or whatever, it's probably the stories of, like, if we're talking combat, it's the ones that weren't balanced. Like, oh, my knight's tank like held off a horde of 40 kobolds. Like, we turn the corner and the demi-lich rose out the chest at the end of the room. Like, and then we booked it. Like, it's a shame that Carl's not here. Carl will always talk about the there was an encounter it was in 4th edition. But yeah, like the big bad like was heading up to them, and like bear in mind, 4th ed was up to like level 30, right? So they were low mid tier, so I think they were like level, maybe not even that, I think they were like level 9, and this guy was supposed to be like the level 30 boss. And yeah, 100%, it was just like, this is an unwinnable fight, because like they were like, oh shit, Dan's got a stat block, Dan means business. Like, Dan knows how many dozens to add to his dice rolls when this guy swings his hammer. So that was memorable because it was an inherently unbalanced fight that they had to run away from. But at the same time, you'd feel like a boss. Like I think we've all thrown in encounters that are deliberately easy, just for that. If like I know I've done it just to let the players have that like superhero, we are awesome feeling, and also to kind of give that difference of like, once upon a time goblins were scary and now we wade through them like a river.
Circular storyline. Yeah.
I kind of want to chime in with one of my own encounters that I created specifically for a player for this one. So there was a character who had been sort of been like manipulated by their quote unquote patron, and one of the smaller gods had like taken notice of this character and was sort of like, I'm gonna help her along. I'm gonna like push her along a little way, help her see that like life is worth living, but I also need to help her improve in like her own internal toughness, because if she doesn't, shit's gonna get bad real quick. and she won't have the like fortitude to fight back.
Yeah.
So essentially what I set up was in a pseudo dream sequence, the player fought the god.
Okay.
Which is almost completely unwinnable in itself.
Yeah.
But the point of the encounter wasn't to kill the god. It was for the god to just kind of almost stand there and go, you need the resolve to fight. If you don't fight me, what's going to happen?
Yes.
I will reach out with a hand and unmake you. He will do that to you too.
That is...
Attack me as if you mean to kill me. And it only took, it took her 3 rounds to actually, land a hit on this god's AC. Quote, heavy quotes, air quotes in AC.
Yeah.
Because until she narratively spun that as, I am attacking to kill, she didn't hit.
Sure. I guess that's the other thing about, the other spanner in the works of CR is the objective. Because, that... What was the CR of that encounter?
Yes.
You know? So if it's... Yeah, precisely. So if it's just if unaliving everything in the room isn't the objective, how do you then track the CR? Because if you're in a chase, if you're being chased, then shouldn't the CR, quote unquote, of a quickling shoot up in comparison to a ooze? What is it? There's no real easy way of checking what's what. So, do we think it's a good thing? Do we think it's something that we ought to be chasing or eschewing completely, or kind of keeping an eye on? But then how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is balance to us?
Well, I think it is for half of the fights. And when I say fights, I mean straight up fights.
Yeah.
But I made a list of the things that you have to take into account for this. So there's pie composition. So Lane touched on that earlier, really important. The player's skill and strategy. For me, as a pro DM, if I'm going to first timers who have no idea what they're doing, I'm not going to have the monsters know what they do. But I'm going to give clues to them, oh, hey, it's the end of your turn, but can you make me an insight check? Okay, you realize that the mummies are only going towards the closest enemy.
Yeah.
So then they can strategize around it.
Yeah.
Action economy, Jesus, we all know about this. Environmental factors like what you just said. So is there a barrel? Is there something they can hide behind? Because one of the things that most DMs forget is cover. It's such a huge thing to get those bonuses to AC.
Yeah.
Abilities and magic items. Do they have a magic item which does extra damage versus an undead? Do they have a cleric which can turn it?
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Yeah, 100%.
Monster abilities and variability, so where they are, and encounter design. So the placement of where they are.
Monsters and their abilities.
Do you have, I've had flying griffins drop in goblins with little hang gliders, so they literally fall on the players. And that's they instantly have to make a strength check to see if they stand up. If the players are all starting from a prone position, that's really bad. So you can make something which on paper looks like they're going to trounce it with goblins into suddenly all the goblins have advantage.
Yeah.
And hey, they're all around you at once, so do they get a sneak attack on that? Is it goblin rogue?
Yeah.
So I don't like CR as a general rule. It's okay, it gives a little bit there, but balance is important. But feel it out, and VTTs are wonderful for testing it out as well. Have something do that, because if something's not where it needs to be, fudge a room with a replenishment that gives them the long rest or something. Yeah, for sure.
The super handy thing with VTTs, isn't it, is if you kind of go, oh, I've underbaked it, you can just drag some more tokens in, or whatnot. You can edit on the fly a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
VTT, I feel. Okay, so you're kind of saying like, what shall we say, sort of like 5 out of 10 because it's important
Yeah.
for half.
The thing that I like to do more than anything is
Sure.
not just have straight combat. I like to
Yeah.
have combat with a puzzle going on.
Yeah.
My favorite's like
Fully concur.
a mirror puzzle with mummies coming out of the mirrors every turn in a pyramid is phenomenal. And then they have to split, oh shit, who's going to turn the mirrors, who's going to kill the mummies. Or there's a social encounter like you've got this many turns until this giant fucking ball comes up. Think back to the movies, Star Wars, where they're blocking the room that's coming in. If you add in combat into that with people, stormtroopers shooting down at them,
Yeah.
there's an added element there. There's all kinds of things
Well,
that you
it's-
can do.
it's,
Put layers on.
Ghosts in the collapsing wall trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Layer your combat. Don't make it one-dimensional. The goblins come at you in a tavern. Like, no.
Because then that takes you even further from the legitimacy of combat.
Yeah.
Acting.
Have the goblins throw Molotov cocktails through the tavern windows. Everyone escapes. But your players have to go out one window and then they ambush them.
Yeah.
Like, add these elements in. Monsters aren't stupid. Even wolves fight in packs. You know,
Yeah,
like
for sure. Because they're good boys.
Sly Flourish writes great books on that. The monsters know what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is a fantastic series.
You said it before, Chris, but I love having puzzle combats, especially bosses. There's 2 bosses that I've made and I'm really, really proud of. I'm just going to very quickly go over one that I created. Probably the one I'm most proud of. So it's a pair of 2 sort of huge statues that are almost like the midway point of a dungeon. Okay. And at the start of a new round, a tarot card is sort of presented to the players in their minds. When the tarot card sort of like comes up, the eyes of one of the statues lights up.
Okay. And
depending on like what the face of the tarot card is, one of them can be injured, one of them can't. Okay. The puzzle, quote unquote, is you've got to realize that if the card represents something physical and tangible, the left one can be injured. If it represents something like spiritual or like an idea, the right one can be injured.
Okay.
So you've got to sort of work that out on the fly.
I like that.
Yeah, that's the sort of boss fight that I'd love to do, and the one that I like to create. So
I think it's really important. I think that those initial fights which you have are all well and good, where you're fighting a pack of wolves or whatever, but you need to keep people interested as well. Yeah. Like, playing D&D is great fun, but they can't be, oh, another combat. Like, that's no good. Like, the reason why Strahd is so loved is because he keeps coming up and saying, I'm going to fuck ID, whether you like it or not. You know, it's...
The thing that got me... So it's interesting you bring up Strahd. Like, because, you know, I played through Strahd until level 5. I think I had to dip out at level 5.
So the bone grinder kind of area?
So, well, it was just before the bone grinder, but I don't think we took the suggested route. So it was like, and that is, obviously it's a sandbox, right? So the Curse of Strahd adventure is a sandbox. Like, you have all of kind of Barovia to stomp around in. There's no defined signposting to what is like level appropriate, quote unquote, for your party at any given point. Like, we accidentally, I won't do spoilers, but we accidentally stumbled into the mist-filled village at like level 4.
Right.
And for those of us who've played Curse of Strahd, we know what's in that village. And that, like, there was no way. Like, it was a sort of point where it's like, you can't run, you can't hide, you can't fight. I guess I'll just die.
Yeah.
And there's I will drop the spoiler for this because it was an encounter that irked me from a like an adventure runner, like a games master perspective. There's a house with 6 vampires spawn in the attic, like upstairs, and you don't know they're there until they jump you. Arguably, there's no signposting for it either. And it's not balanced. Like, when you're supposed to be doing this quest, quote unquote, like, in no way, shape, or form would in inverted commas, like a sane games master go, I think they'll really enjoy 6 monsters that can, like, stun you and hold you down and eat you, and like there was no real way, like, you can't magic them, they're really hard to hurt, they're really fast, they're really durable, and you're all cramped in, which is their preferred environment. So from a monster's perspective, fantastic, but from like a player's enjoyment perspective, it's a bit like, oh, come on, because you just have very little wiggle room. What I found with Curse of Strahd is that, like, to make it imbalanced will just make it absurdly hard. From a monster, like, we'll just put twice as many, like, monsters as there should be in this encounter. And it's just like, it's not like, you can have imbalanced encounters that are fun. So, you know, for example, I don't know, like you know, those 6 vampires spawn. What if they're not just stopping you from leaving the room, they're chasing you through the streets, or you are playing cat and mouse and, like, trying to hide from them as best you can, or you're trying to stop them from going from house to house and eating all the villagers or whatnot. Like, there's other ways that you can frame it to make it more fun, whilst also leaning in on the fact that it's hard as balls. Something else that made me, like, when I was thinking about this whole thing, like, people talking about balance and sort of, like, either eschewing or praising its virtues, over the past week, I've heard howls of anger from whatever room Julia's been in, because she's been playing through Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, okay. Is she playing what difficulty?
I won't say.
Okay.
Just for the interest of the story. But no. So I've realised, you know, from the bits of game that I've played through so far, you know, with Lane in the co-op and then, like, my solo play after the fact, there's a lot of encounters in that game that could be considered far too imbalanced.
There are, except
Yeah.
you have the extended party to bring in whatever you want.
You can mix and match, that's for sure.
Also, just play a ranger, you will trivialize combat.
Or play a bard and never get into combat, right?
Yes, yeah, just talk your way through it. So, I mean, case in point, when, like, Julia's party found the cave with spiders in it. Near the
Oh, that's a fucker.
Right.
I died to that live on the Roll Dark stream as a known barbarian but where, because it was in the early access, and I was like, I'll do this cave. It's no you.
So it's the fact that I bring that one up specifically because I saw the pop-up on Julia's screen that went, "This is a fight you can't win. You should consider running away." And it was like the tooltip prompt for someone potentially who's either never played D&D or has played D&D and is far too cocky and doesn't understand the CR rating of a phase spider. But I found it interesting that maybe it's because I haven't been specifically looking, but I feel like there's not as much "this isn't balanced" discourse around Baldur's Gate 3, which leans into combat arguably much more heavily than the tabletop version of D&D, because Baldur's Gate 3 can't fudge it.
It can. So one of the default settings, which most people don't know about in Baldur's Gate 3, yeah, exactly. So you've got it. So if you're having a really shit run of it, the karmic dice will turn up. Oh, you've got a natural 20, and suddenly that fireball has destroyed
Yeah,
8
yeah, for sure.
or whatever. And yeah, I think that's a really good feature, to be fair. But you're right, it's much more combat heavy because it's a video game.
Yeah.
And that's what video game players want.
But then there's that whole idea that there doesn't seem to be this idea that it is. There doesn't seem to be any kind of upset about the combats being unbalanced, as in not level appropriate for your 6 to 8 encounters a day.
So there's two things here, right? First of all, when you're playing a video game, oh fuck you, I'm going to open up a Chrome browser and see how to just. Oh yeah, okay. I shoot the arrow to put the stompy thing on the giant mech. That makes sense, yeah. But when you're around and like, if you're, and I only heard this term with Baldur's Gate 3, and I really don't like it. Scum saving.
Save scumming, yeah.
Save scumming. I hate that term so much because I'm like, if somebody wants to play a video game, let them play a video game however they want. If you go back to a previous save, then it's no big deal. If it's, Lane touched on this, if it's your character that you've spent hours, you've commissioned artwork for, you've got a mini that you've painted for hours, and then one little fucker comes along and you're dead, you're like,
you can't save scum at the tabletop, can you?
Yeah. You're like, great. But there's my alter ego. I've seen people laugh, cry, all kinds of things about this, and it's, man, there's a connection with tabletop.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
I suppose there's also the difference of, like, in Baldur's Gate 3, if you beef it and just get eaten by a cave full of phase spiders, you just reload.
Yeah, or you use a revivify scroll, which always works. Which isn't the case in tabletop. I like that about Baldur's Gate 3. I like how much even more accessible it is than D&D. And that's why it's been so fucking successful.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
More successful than the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't deny that.
Yeah.
Lane, any thoughts on the attitudes towards BG3 as opposed to tabletop? But no spoilers past where we're at.
Well, fuck me then, I guess.
There's all this stuff that happens after the 6th hour.
I think what Baldur's Gate is going to do for a lot of people that have never played D&D before is help them get attached to a character. I did exactly the same thing. I've played D&D. I've been playing tabletop since 2018. That's not a long time compared to a lot of people. But when I played Baldur's Gate in the early access, I got very, very attached to my paladin.
Sure.
So I transferred them over to be a D&D character.
Okay. Yeah.
Not a lot of games have managed to do that for me before.
That's fair.
But through the choices you can make, because it's such a wildly winding game, where every tiny little decision you can make has consequences.
Like, it's been cleverly programmed in. Yeah, that's fair.
Can I... Yeah. Weird little segue. Right now on High Rollers, the Baldur's Gate 3 cast are playing play D&D.
Yeah.
As themselves, yeah.
That's
the dream gig right there, right now, isn't it?
Mark Holmes,
Mark Hulmes is a lucky bastard. But yeah, if Mark Hulmes, if you're sick, Wizards, give any of us a call. We're local. So okay, I'm gonna pivot away from D&D because I appreciate that. Like, surprisingly, there are more RPGs than just D&D.
Oh, absolutely.
When was the last time you heard someone complain about balance in Call of Cthulhu or Honey
There's a
Heist?
difference. There's a difference in expectation.
Or
exactly
Thirsty Sword Lesbians, or Shadowrun, or any of the above. Like, they're like, obviously all of those RPGs fundamentally run at a very different pace to D&D. But like, when you look at games like Shadowrun, for example, if we take core Shadowrun from Catalyst or FSL before that, that is the epitome of the unbalanced game, isn't it? Like, you are organized criminals, and you are going up against country or world-spanning corporations with their super high-tech stuff that will eradicate you from the face of the planet. And yet, I mean, certainly that's been the case with like the sprawl that we've been running for like London Underground, which is powered by the apocalypse. But like, would you argue that there's less emphasis on balance in non-D&D games? Like the ones you've played?
It's the difference in expectation. You go into Call of Cthulhu thinking, I am a tiny, insignificant speck. I will make a blip of a difference, but that blip is enough to bring hope to a future generation. We will lose in the end, but we have a small victory now.
Yes.
Dungeons and Dragons and other games like that are based around the power fantasy of we are heroes, we're the good guys, quote unquote, playing an evil campaign, whatever, and we will win out in the end.
Would you agree with that, Chris?
I think that Lane's absolutely right. The expectation of Call of Cthulhu is you're going to die horribly. Like, don't doubt it.
No one playing a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game is going to expect to make it to the end of the campaign.
Yeah, but there's also a session zero expectation, right?
Sure.
Like you're talking it through, like, guys, this isn't D&D. You know, eldritch horrors are going to come and try and, you know, put your brain in a chokehold. There's, but also there isn't as much passion for those games, arguably, because the community isn't as big. Not individually, because I'm sure there are some really passionate but as a sum total, that passion is much more there for D&D because it's the world's biggest role-playing game. So you get all of that together, and what happens is you have all of these different groups. I was talking to the other DMs on the charity stream about this. I was saying when I started playing Shadowrun in 2nd edition 25 years ago, it was very gatekeepery for, you know, we were 15, 16-year-old guys, and the I think it was like Greyhawk books were everywhere in our local game store, and there were hundreds of books, and it was very much, no, this is our thing, fuck off. Like, it was very gatekeepery. And those old players now, you find that now there's a much more femme audience, a much more queer audience coming in, and they're becoming the massive player base, which is great. And then the younger audience as well, the stuff that you'll be working on soon, Dan. All those younger guys getting in, because it's so much more accessible. So the more accessible a game, the more people are going to want a more balanced game. Because if you're coming to it from video games, that's been tested to the minute detail by a team of 50 testers or whatever, to make sure that to get from God of War level 1 to God of War level 10, as a really bad example, every encounter is balanced to be just right. But also, they might have been playing Elden Ring or something like that. And so, it's all about, like Lane said, the expectation. So, and you've got to remember that D&D is the gateway drug to all other tabletop.
I mean, so would we agree if I said in bold lettering the balance, the concept of balance, is actually a player construct rather than a mechanical one?
I think Wizards would like it to be mechanical, but as hard as they try, it's not going to be.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
From a player's point of view, it's very much we can go in and we can win this all the time. And that, on the, like, when we're talking about those really difficult encounters, I think the players sometimes need humbling as well.
Well, it's interesting you say that. It's now out, so we can talk about it. But Lane, episode 14 of Year 1 campaign. So that was like the end of Arc 2, like Act 2 finale. That was like the big cinematic, all the CGI budget spent on it kind of episode.
The Doctor Who wedding episode. No, Sherlock wedding episode.
Sherlock wedding episode. And the decision point going into it was, do we split the party? Like, there are two threats. Do we split the party? And like, something that I've joked about in our personal chats is that one of the players said, "Oh, it's going to be interesting to see how Dan tweaks the combat encounters depending on how we split." And I was just like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. And like, I think we can all agree, if I were to use the DMG chart and kind of lay it all out, that those encounters, because there was multiple running simultaneously, were all woefully unbalanced against the party. But arguably a very fun session. I would like to hope we thought it was a very fun session because it was exciting. It felt dangerous. I'd like to think we kept the pace up enough that nothing felt like it had outstayed its welcome. And there were some pretty crushing end results off the back of it. If I'd made it a balanced encounter, I feel like it just wouldn't have had anywhere near as much punch.
Yeah.
But sorry, yeah, I've reverted back to D&D there. We've got the finale for the Shadowrun miniseries coming up. And it's actually recording very soon. And one of the things I found myself thinking about is, like, what do I do for the finale encounter? Like, how, and I caught myself thinking, how do I make this balanced? And I couldn't find the answer. I couldn't figure it out, and I've been racking my brains for it for ages. And I realised, I think the problem is because I'm trying to attain something that's inherently unattainable, even more so in the setting of Shadowrun, the Sprawl, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was almost immediately thinking, oh, this is going to be like a big fight. How many baddies are there going to be? But then, like, is it actually going to be that? Like, should it be that? I doubt it should be. I guess we'll see when that episode eventually comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Shadowrun's interesting, right? Because it's all the gear, no idea. Like, it's a huge... like, yes. People just... Yes. Like, I am fucking Rambo Street Samurai.
Yeah.
And then a rogue sniper bullet gets you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Because... And you just can't tell with all of that stuff. And that's the one thing that Shadowrun does really well that D&D doesn't, is the amount of gear in it. Like, the amount of customization and stuff like that. Same with Cyberpunk. Those systems are really good about making you one-man armies.
Yeah.
With augmentations and all that kind of stuff. D&D started that with tattoos, but they never really followed on, which I thought was a shame.
Make it even harder to balance encounters if they did.
Well, yeah, but then the main thing about that is, if you're going to have a tattoo, so are my guys. You know, that's...
Yeah.
You know, these guys can have barrier tattoos or whatever.
Sure.
But Shadowrun is... You'll know when the players are going out to buy fucking RPG or whatever. And you're like, oh, shit, that dragon's gonna...
Yes.
So it is tough, but... You can put anti-magic fields up if you feel like the Psyker's getting too hard and have them do a puzzle element. Or you can have them stuck into chains and do something where an NPC turns on them at the last minute and, hey, it was all a ruse, this kind of thing. And I think it's, as long as your players are experiencing it in a joyful manner, balance doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long I think yeah, if it's the right amount of challenging, if it's exciting, if it's compelling, then, and the balance, instead of being, are there too many monsters, are there not enough monsters, I think if we look at the tightrope of balance being, are my players engaged? So rather than being something like in the middle that you're trying to strive for, you're almost like it's more of a peak that you're trying to stay as close to the top as of like actual player engagement. And then I think if you're watching that and changing things and affecting things to improve upon that, I think that's you're absolutely. I think that is more important than mechanical balance. Would you agree, Elaine?
To an extent. When I'm thinking about being a player, my aim for a fight is to have a good time and struggle but come out on top. One of the worst things that I completely want to avoid in like almost any game, and I will never do it to my players, is dying off of the back of a random dice roll.
Has to be meaningful, right?
Yeah.
I don't like killing players for that.
I've zotted a wizard with a beholder disintegration ray by accident. I mean, that was an accident because it was a zombie beholder, so it was a random roll, and I rolled just enough to drop him to 0 hit points, to the point where we all sat there going, "Oh no!" But
so, like something like that, I'm relatively okay with, but it's like I'm going to use another example here. A friend had me on to play like a guest character in one of his games, where he was an architect, and this city was looking for an architect. But he's also like a fairly substantially like powerful bodyguard to a noble in another city. So I'm playing a level 17 character in a group of level 10s.
Okay.
And as the party's traveling, they run into, on a random roll, for, I don't remember what they're called, the giant bug that hurts you when you hit it with fire damage.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Lane.
Fire
I know what you
beetles?
mean.
Yeah, you know the one I mean.
Well, yeah.
I don't remember the exact name of it. My mind wants to say Vorinclex, but that's Magic the Gathering. That's completely different.
Is it not just giant fire beetle or something like that?
No, it's
Spicy bug.
Yeah.
Refer to it as spicy bug.
And the party rolled a 4 of those, and there's only so much this like extremely high level character can do. Remoraz, that's it. One of the party members was dropped to 0, swallowed, and taken under the sand. She's dead.
Okay.
And they're not going to get her back.
Yeah.
So as the party sort of arrived to this new city and dropped the character I was playing off, he was like, I truly am sorry for your loss, and I hope whatever reward that you were promised for bringing me here was, I hope it was worth it in some way.
Yeah.
And that was a random death, but it was built up and given enough meaning that the party could continue on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Basically, give a very roundabout way of saying, if my character's gonna die, let me give that death a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. So, with that in mind, it's probably time to start wrapping things up. Yeah, I'd be interested to see your thoughts, those of you who are watching or listening. By all means, chuck some ideas in the comments about what you would consider balanced or not, and whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, whether it's a necessary thing. Whilst you're doing that, Chris, whereabouts on the interwebs might we find you?
Yes. So I'll because I do most of my work through them, I'll give 2 plugs if that's okay.
Yeah,
So you
go
can
for it.
find me on house_of Hugh. That's HYGGE. But you can find Roldark on, which is where I do a lot of my pro DM work, at Roldark GMA.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you can find Lane and I right here on the Explorers of Elsewhere channel. So Lane's in the Year 1 campaign, which is hurtling towards its big finale. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon for notifications when we upload new stuff to keep on top of that. But we're also doing a Baldur's Gate 3 co-op playthrough. So
And as part of that playthrough, my character has a cowboy hat. I am cursed to become a cowboy drow no matter what happens.
That is true, but I was doing the thumbnail and noticed that, yes. Yes, you can see me complain about combat imbalance in real time as we play through that.
Can I ask if you're using karmic dice in that?
I don't, maybe.
It's on by default.
Okay, ooh, maybe I should turn it off without turning it on.
One slight plug I want to make as well before we go.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've kind of been kept it under wraps, but I have been working on 2 tabletop RPG systems recently, and one of them's actually getting very close to being able to release.
Okay.
Oh.
It is called the one that I'm going to be possibly running on the channel, maybe later. It's called the Eidolon Project, and the one that's close to release is called We Bleed Neon. It's a very sort of neon punk, fuck corpos, fuck the system, anti-fascist game that I'll hopefully be putting up for actual sale and release soon.
Exciting stuff. Exciting stuff.
Awesome.
Okay,
and
yes.
Pride Calf tomorrow.
Well, funny you should say that, as I posted the link in the chat. Yes. For anyone in or around the Bristol area who happens to be watching this live, tomorrow, so the 23rd of September, at the station in Bristol City Centre, so it's like the old fire station. You should come visit Pride Caf, which is an LGBT plus arts and comics fair, hence CAF, Comics and Arts Fair, run by the amazing Nate and Chris Locke, who've been on the channel in various things in the past. Quite a few of us are going to be down there. We're going to be helping out. We're going to be celebrating all of the amazing stuff that the community is putting out.
I have to see if I can make it.
Absolutely. It's free entry, and it's just a fantastic opportunity to pick up some wonderful art. There's a couple of presentations and so on and so forth as well. So, with all that said, thank you two for joining me tonight. It's been good to natter about the a very hot potato topic, especially in the D&D world.
Oh, you just wait until we get to a different topic. I have a spicy take that I'm ready to drop,
We'll
like a bomb.
We'll do a spicy take one soon. Thank you all for watching and or listening, and take care. Have a good one. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.